Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy issue 6, Jodie Hauser writing, with Adriana Milo on the art. So take it away.
This ends the Harley and Ivy mini, right? As the last issue,
Yep.
And it wraps everything up as neatly as it can, and it kind of made me sad because I really enjoyed reading this book. I'm glad I got caught up on it.
Yeah, it's a great book, and I don't know if you've seen, there were a bunch of people on Twitter this week upset about a moment, and I thought, oh, they're just kind of over exaggerating, and then I got to it, and I'll tell you, we'll get there because it's near the end of the issue, but I'm docking an entire point for that moment.
Oh man, okay. Well, I like where this leads because you find out that the poison ivy that attacked them at the end of the last issue is the actual true Ivy.
Yeah.
And what happened was when she opened that gift from Luther with the fertilizer and whatnot, it created a bunch of basically saplings, or she calls them cuttings.
Yeah, they're just like little offshoots. So they are her in a way. They're just fragments of her. They're just not all, they're not the true her.
So when Harley got out of there in the fire, right? She grabbed one of the offshoots and left the real Pamela Isley, Poison Ivy, there to burn. She's not happy about it.
Understandably.
Right. So while she's been on this adventure, it's really been the original Ivy that's been hunting them, not Floronic Man.
Yeah.
So,
Mr. Harley for just doing her own thing and
right.
not actually saving her.
Right. And that it all boils down to, she points out, like, you got so wrapped up in turning me in what you wanted me to be instead of what I truly am that you didn't even notice you didn't have me.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a really strong point. Like,
yeah, and when she accuses her of this, Harley's like, no, it's not like that. I love you. And she's just like, well, clearly not enough. But it's actually a really emotional moment. And it works really well.
And it works really well. And it reminds me of in White Knight when Joker didn't realize, right, that there was two Harleys.
I didn't see that. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I like that. I like what that means with Harley being so focused now on being this anti-hero and wanting to drag wanting to drag Ivy with her. She didn't stop to think what Ivy wants to do and what this means after, we don't ever like to bring up heroes in crisis, but it did change her, right? This is a reborn Harley. It's the same one, right? That was
Ivy.
Reborn. Right. That's what I meant. Ivy. Yeah. Right.
I think what is interesting though is the cutting just kind of mentioned that no, these feelings they're still me. I am still Ivy. I'm just and when I'm kind of reabsorbed into the main Ivy, she'll remember that. And these feelings I've got all of the feelings for you right now. And that Ivy doesn't have them. But once I'm reabsorbed, we'll both have them. They'll be there.
It's still, so what I like here too, and I don't know if this is I don't know people had an issue with this. I do like that it adds a bit of, not confusion, but it adds a degree of difficulty to the relationship with this, right? Because now Ivy feels like she's kind of scorned, right? Like,
yeah, but we've got I'm just gonna refer to this book's Ivy that we've had as our Ivy. She kind of mentions, she's not whole, not yet, and she doesn't remember, but she will, and this will come back around, and everything will be okay in the end.
Right, but what I'm saying is those feelings will always be there.
Yeah.
But if the prime Ivy is still upset, those are gonna. I mean, she'll still remember these times, but she's still mad that Harley took off. So that's what I mean by she feeling scorned, right? They don't have this clear, like, what's the right word? Because it is a complex relationship, right? But it's not as clear cut as it was here. That we thought like this whole issue was going to end with them coupling up in the further adventures.
I think that's the problem. Everything from the Palmiotti and Connor Harley Quinn run that kind of established this relationship has been pretty definitively, no, they're in a relationship.
Yeah.
And then this kind of, it murkies it, and that's okay. There's drama here. And I don't think the people who are annoyed at this issue are annoyed at the quote-unquote prime reborn Ivy being scorned. The problem actually comes slightly before that.
Okay.
And I'm with them. It's when, our Ivy is giving her the big speech, and, she leans in and goes to, give her a kiss, goodbye, and then just gives her a kiss on the forehead.
I see that.
And it
I can.
completely, I get where that, because if you look at the panel before, they're leaned in, that they're
Well, it's almost like they
writing
got
there.
wet feet. They backed down from doing a full.
Yeah,
Right. Yeah. And I can see that. I don't see how that would drop a full point for me because the sentiment's
I
still there with the kiss on the forehead.
no,
You know
for
what I
me,
mean?
no, because for me, I did feel that it was like this weird moment where, because they've kissed a bunch of times in comics over the past few years, like this is
Right.
not like a new thing. And then this moment here where the panel before, if you look at the panel before, like they are leaning in for it. And Ivy's got her hands on Harley's face, and it's there. And then the next is this full page, which should have been that moment of this Ivy saying goodbye and giving her that kiss with those relationship of that relationship, and then going to get reabsorbed, but instead kind of just doesn't. And it actually really took me out of the story because it was really weird. Because I didn't know, when people were complaining before I read this, I didn't know the full context because I hadn't read what
Right.
exactly it was they were upset about. I just knew it was something about their relationship.
Like,
And then
I
I
get
got
where
to
they're
that and
coming
it's
from,
weird.
but looking at this here, it still works for me because there's still affection there. Because they're both, Harley knows what's gonna happen, so
Yeah.
it doesn't bother me. But if people were so invested in this, because of representation and wanting to feel like, I understand where they can see that they back down, but for me, it doesn't bother me because I feel that the effect is still the same, right? Like
Yeah.
there's still.
I think for me, I did feel it because if you look at that two panels before that page, if you cut out that very last panel, so you got the panel before where Ivy puts her hands on Harley, she's
Right.
Harley's on the floor and she's crying. If
Right.
you go from that into the next one, it makes a lot of sense. But with that next panel where Ivy is leaning right in and she is there, and then it does feel like she pulled away and changed her mind, and that's where I think the feeling of
Yeah.
it being taken away comes from. At least
See,
from me reading it.
yeah, and I feel like too it might just not be because of the girl aspect too. You want to keep relationships open for certain characters. DC's done this maddeningly over the years, right?
Yeah.
So,
That's
but
true.
you just thought, and then I understand why people would be upset because you feel like, well, Joker's in the past now for Harley, and who knows with Ivy, going forward. It's never like she has a dead set, romantic interest outside of Harley. So
No,
yeah,
and I think this doesn't actually this bit at the end doesn't ruin their relationship because it is okay. So it's
yeah,
the two Ivies fighting. Our Ivy tells Harley to run and get away,
yep,
and she fights and she does get reabsorbed, and yeah, she probably does still feel scorned. She's annoyed at Harley
yeah,
for having left her and burn her, but she's
hmm
got these memories now, and going forward with a little bit of time to mellow, she'll come back around, I'm sure.
yeah, and then that's fine. And I like the narration at the end of the joke that Harley tries to tell, about the
Yeah,
good twin and whatnot. And I do like here that she's like, yeah, love hurts, and this is gonna hurt going forward. But yeah, no, I thoroughly enjoyed where this went, and I actually was surprised that's what the other Ivy turned out to be. It wasn't like, oh, this was an Ivy that, kind of figured that's what it was going to be, but not in the same way.
yeah, we didn't have it penned down exactly.
No, but I do like this relationship a lot. So I do hope we don't get away from it too much. But I mean, all the humor was here, like again, down to that joke and how it fits with with Harley, and then with Ivy going forward, her knowing like, well, eventually we'll come back together.
Yeah, and I appreciate in the action that you could always tell the two Ivies apart really distinctly because that
Yeah.
could have been a challenge.
Well, it could have been. It's the way that the prime Ivy, the different flowers in her hair, she's a lot more ornate than our Ivy, which is more.
It's very simple, and that plays into
simple.
the idea that she's just a cutting. She's not the fully formed thing.
Right.
She's just a little part of her.
Right. Yeah. I still am waiting for a Cycle of Life and Death to be brought back up because I figured maybe that's where this was going, but
that seems to have been
didn't.
forgotten about. I mean, it was fun though. I like that mini.
It was. I like that mini a lot. I like how Ivy's trying to be an independent woman and she ends up having kids on her own. That it doesn't go the way she wants it to be.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was really enjoyed it. So yeah. So what'd you rate in this one after all that?
after all that, after knocking the point off, I'm giving it a 7.
Nice. I'm going with 7.5. I really enjoyed this. The same as the other issues. It was a nice 6-issue little mini that I felt was worth our time.
Right? Oh, definitely. And it was a really just solid, it wasn't like a big surprising conclusion. It ends kind of in a really natural way. So it's not like, oh, look at all these big shock twists. And
I do feel it did a lot more emotional heavy lifting than stuff in Heroes in Crisis with Ivy.
Yeah.
Right? Because here she has all these emotions. She still doesn't know exactly who she is, but I feel this is a different Ivy than where we left her from Crisis.
Oh yeah,
or even going into there with the Tom King story that none of us really enjoyed. Like now we have a clear cut. So when we see her again, this is the de facto Ivy, I hope.
Yeah, I think the Ivy that we're going to have going forward is a little bit more confused. She's going to have these memories from this few months that she spent with Harley, kind of wrapping around into that reborn, mind that she had that will maybe influence who she is going forward. That should be fun.
And it still works why I like her so much, because she could be a hero, but she doesn't like people, much like I don't like people. So I think there should definitely be less of them.
Yeah.
So that works out.